Did you know that William Peter Blatty, author of the original Exorcist novel, was actually a devout Catholic? Yeah, if you can believe it, his intention wasn't to write a horror story at all. It was, in his words, to write a sermon no one could sleep through. Well, in that regard, you can say that the Exorcist believer doesn't live up to his original vision, namely that this is a sermon that you can sleep through. Alright, before we get started, as always, a quick thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. If you enjoy the content I make and would like to offer your support, then for as little as $1 a month, you can get your name listed right here at the start of every video. Link to that is in the description below. And now, let's get into the actual review.
Mama!
What is it, baby? Baby, I'm right here.
I don't want to go to hell!
Good. Play that trick on you.
The Exorcist Believer is the technically 6th film in the Exorcist franchise, and is the first of a supposed new trilogy brought to you by the same people who brought you the new Halloween trilogy. That should inspire a lot of confidence in you. 2 girls suddenly disappear after school one day, and then 3 days later reappear, seemingly unharmed at first, but over time start developing strange and disturbing behavior that indicate that they may not be alone. One of the things that genuinely baffles me about this film is that I have no idea who was asking for this. The previous Exorcist movie was released 18 years ago. And not only that, but the demonic possession subgenre has been copied and copied so much since the original Exorcist film that I genuinely have no idea what else new you could really do with it. At least with something like The Pope's Exorcist, the film was self-aware with how cliché it was at times, and wasn't afraid to go intentionally goofy. This film is taking itself very seriously, but when you get down to it, all we're doing is just watching the first film again, only told worse. Oh, except no, this one's totally different because it's 2 girls that got possessed instead of 1. I am not exaggerating when I say that this film feels like your typical generic demonic possession film, like one that we've seen get churned out of Hollywood in the past few years. And then at the last second, they added a few scenes of Ellen Burstyn reprising her role as Chris McNeil and deciding to call it an Exorcist sequel. Yes, she's literally only in the film about 5 minutes. And I'm not exaggerating when I say you could cut her scenes and not miss a thing. And let's see, she's an old legacy character from something nostalgic. Any guesses as to what they decided to do with her character? You guessed it, now she's old and sad and washed up and her life sucks. Just as all legacy characters should be. It's not like I can say this film is absolutely terrible, but it is so aggressively mediocre. This film relies on the same old tricks that demonic possession films have been relying on for years. There is absolutely nothing shocking or fresh or new about this film. The first film was genuinely shocking, and at the time nobody had seen anything like it before, and these images sear and stick with you. Even today, scenes like Regan, how do I put this delicately, doing things with a crucifix, or doing things with her mother, are still shocking and likely wouldn't fly today, at least not in a mainstream film. What's shocking about this film? Ooh, look, an inverted cross etched into someone's skin. Haven't seen that before. A possessed girl levitating into the air. Gee, haven't seen that before. Then communion wafers are dumped onto the ground. Oh, wow, how scary. How long did it take you to come up with that one? The closest thing I can think of to something genuinely shocking happening is that it actually portrays a character expressing regret over aborting her child, and then the demons use this against her during the Exorcist scene. And the only reason this is shocking is because this was made by a major Hollywood studio, which has a stereotype of being uber liberal. And I'm kind of surprised that they were willing, especially in this political climate, to have a character express any kind of regret over having an abortion. Sure, it lines up perfectly with Catholic doctrine of abortion being a sin, but I was still shocked that it was included nonetheless. But yeah, since it's been brought up, let's actually discuss probably the only genuinely interesting thing about this movie. And that's this film's attempt to try to bring in other denominations outside of Catholicism into the fold, such as Baptists, Pentecostals, and even Hoodoo. Now, a part of me wants to give this film some credit for trying to teach some kind of message about unity in the church. But at the same time, it doesn't help that the movie essentially uses universalist undertones to justify it. What I mean by this is that you wind up seeing conservative Baptists doing things that I do not believe that they would actually do, particularly when it comes to some of the hoodoo rituals. And then at the end of the film, when you have one of the main characters narrating at the end and pretty much laying out what the film's spiritual messages they want you to take away from it are, it uses a lot of secular humanist reasoning that I do not believe a devout Catholic would be saying. It's pretty obvious that the makers of this film haven't really been in the Bible Belt and really only understand religion on a surface level. And that's not even getting into other basic mistakes, like how the film tries to draw a parallel between the 3 days of the girls going missing and the 3 days of Jesus being dead, even though according to the Gospels, Jesus was actually dead for 2 days, a 48-hour period, Friday to Sunday, not 3 days. But okay, that's almost a little bit too nitpicky even for me. But even as a film in and of itself, I can't really say that this works. The characters aren't really super interesting. They exist, and that's it. There's a lot of characters this film is trying to introduce, so there's a lot of weird and bizarre pacing moments that feel completely out of place. One really bizarre scene that left me scratching my head involved the dad coming home and finding out that his neighbor, who I guess they were close enough that he had a key to his house, but that hadn't been established beforehand, having broken in and invited a total stranger into his missing daughter's bedroom. And this character had only gotten a brief introduction at the very beginning, and I'd completely forgotten about him, so it actually took me a second to remember who he even was. And this film doesn't really flow together very well at all. There are things that happen, particularly in the climax, that don't feel very well thought out. And if I had to guess, I'm going to assume that they included them because it's setting something up for the forthcoming second film. And yeah, speaking of which, I can imagine a lot of people being really pissed off at the film's ending. Like I said, I think where the film ends is supposed to lead into the second, but if people don't know that, there are going to be some that are going to leave with a really bitter taste in their mouth. Especially since it was so obvious what was going to happen, and everyone in universe acts like it was the biggest surprise ever. In terms of what I liked, some of the makeup work was okay. The acting's passable for the most part. And I was at least partially invested in the climax, even if it was predictable where it was all headed. The Exorcist Believer is a movie that did not need to exist. It is so jejune and surface level that it never comes close to achieving anything resembling fright or creepiness. It is very uneven, lacks the bite and urgency the original film had, and can't shake the feeling that this was made solely to make money and nothing else. Not because anyone involved actually had a story that actually needed to be told. This isn't the worst horror film of the year because, believe me, it has some stiff competition. But this one's just a bunch of nothing that's going to struggle to stick with me, because it just didn't leave an impact. The Exorcist Believer gets an empty shot. And I guess that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you want to see my early thoughts of any film I watch, or to read more of my reviews, make sure to check out my Letterboxd account. The link to that is in the description below. And make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss any upcoming reviews. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.